Innuendo, Book 5 of the Todd Mills Mystery Series. Author, R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher, Scribble Pub Press, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 1. Well, thought Todd, looking down at the mass of newspaper clippings and articles spread on his dining room table. What if it was true? What if one of the biggest stars in America, one of the most famous actors in the world, was really gay? And what if Todd, an investigative reporter for WLAK, actually got an interview with Tim Chase, who was in Minneapolis, shooting a film? How would Todd approach it? What angle would he take? Raising his head, Todd stared out the balcony doors of his condo. An interview with Tim Chase was, to put it mildly, a long shot. But if by chance Todd got it, he'd have to handle it with the utmost care. After all, it was only a year or so ago that Chase had sued one of the supermarket tabloids over a headline that read, "Mean Queen Chase denies 7-year gay romance and buries boyfriend in poverty." And he'd won too. Big time. While the tabloid had sold completely out of that issue, the story had eventually cost the journal $8.5 million, a sum that Tim Chase's spokesperson said clearly vindicated Chase's sexuality. Todd still shuddered at the homophobia permeating that quote. A shrill ring broke his thoughts, and he quickly reached for the cordless phone lying atop the glass table, as if it weren't late evening and he weren't at home, but still it worked. He said, "Todd Mills." "It's me." "Have you?" Todd glanced at his watch, saw that it was just after 9, which meant that Steve Rawlings, Todd's lover, had less than 90 minutes to go on middle watch. With any luck, Minneapolis would remain murder-free at least until 10:30, when Rawlings' shift on car 1110, which was manned 24 hours a day by homicide investigators, was over. "I wish you'd come home so I'd stop working," said Todd. "Well," began Rawlings in that deep, buttery voice, "that's why I'm calling. Something just came up." "Don't say that." "Unfortunately, it's all over the police bands. You haven't heard anything yet, huh?" "No." But Todd was sure he would any minute. If it was all over the police bands, the tip callers, any variety of nerdy informants who sat by their radios, would be calling WLAK and every other station in town with the hot information, which meant that it would not only be a late night for Rawlings, who would automatically be assigned the case, but for Todd as well. No doubt about it, Todd was going to have to scramble like hell just to keep up with the competition. "I'm guessing I won't be home until very late, if at all," Rawlings said. "That doesn't sound good. What happened?" "Foster and I are on our way there now. I'm calling from his car. All I know is that some kid's gone and got his throat slit." "Oh, God," replied Todd. "Where?" "25th and Bryant." "Got a name?" "Todd," muttered Rawlings, clearly irritated. "Well, you know damn well I'm going to find out sooner or later." Rawlings hesitated before saying, "No, I don't have a name yet. All I know is that it's a young white male." Todd grabbed a pen and jotted down the address and a bit of information, knowing that no matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't get anything more out of Rawlings, for the collision of their careers was one of the two most contentious issues between them. The second, which had only recently come up, was whether they should continue to have a monogamous relationship, or perhaps agree to an open one. "I guess I'll be seeing you in a few minutes," said Todd. "I guess." They chatted a bit more, and then Todd hung up. As was his habit, he glanced again out the balcony doors at the dark sky over Lake Calhoun and made a mental list of whom he had to call and what he had to do next. Next, he went into full speed. Some 15 minutes later, Todd was racing north on Lindell, thinking that, no, this wasn't like being an ambulance chaser. It was being an ambulance chaser. This push, this desperate rush, not simply to be the best, but the first. And not simply the Johnny on the spot, but the one with the most dramatic, the most real and gruesome of shots. Glancing at his watch, Todd saw that it was 25 minutes until the 10 p.m. Yes, it could still happen. Before leaving his condo, Todd had called WLAK and requested an ENG truck, one of those boxy vehicles equipped with tape decks, video monitors, and a microwave mask. He then phoned Bradley, his photographer, at home, interrupting him and his wife in the middle of their favorite show. And with any luck, Todd, Bradley, and the ENG technician would converge at the scene of the crime, get all set up, and start broadcasting live right at the top of the late news, WLAK's 10 at 10, if things went perfectly. 2, Bradley would still be able to get some tape of that all-important shot, the one of the body as it was rolled away. Then again, who knew just when they'd be taking the body away? The scene was sure to be a madhouse, swarming with cops, the Bureau of Investigation team, and the guys from Homicide, namely Rawlings and his partner, Neil Foster, who'd been on duty on car 1110 since 3 that afternoon. So it could be hours, perhaps as long as 2, even 3, before the medical examiner rolled out the victim, driving his new Jeep Grand Cherokee, his old one having been smashed in a tornado that past summer. Todd took a deep breath. Brace yourself, he told himself. Who knew if this would be a great story? But it definitely would be a late night. In his early 40s, Todd Mills was almost too old to be chasing around like this, at least by television standards. He was still in great shape, no doubt about it, and his face, which was almost rugged, but definitely handsome, with a small mouth and chin and eyes that were much too soft, still attracted attention. He had a full head of medium brown hair, too, the importance of which could never be overlooked in television. But this was a young person's job, and at some point in the not-so-distant future, he was either going to have to make the leap to an anchor position, in which case he'd be one of only 2 or 3 openly gay anchors in the country, or he'd have to retreat, per se, to the position of a producer. And if he stayed in the area, Todd was betting on the later. As liberal and open-minded as Minnesota liked to believe it was, there was only so far Todd had come to feel things could be pushed. In other words, he was highly skeptical that viewers would knowingly tolerate a homosexual every night in their homes, let alone see an openly gay anchor as a pillar of honesty and trust. And if even a handful of viewers objected to a gay anchor, that would be one too many for management, which could only be described as skittish. His truck hit a pothole, of which there were so many these days, particularly on Lindell, an old street pocked with time, and the entire vehicle rattled. His fingers tightened on the wheel, and his mind skipped back to the official request he'd submitted to Tim Chase's publicity people just last week. What he wanted to find out, of course, was if what he'd heard about Chase was really true. He couldn't deny he'd been all but obsessed since he'd heard the story several months ago, and particularly now that Chase was in town. Todd had heard lots of gossip about famous people from friends of friends who knew someone whose uncle was in the movie business. But this was as direct as he would ever get. Marcia, an old college pal, had called Todd up not even 2 hours after she'd heard it directly from John Vox. "Oh my God, Todd, you're not going to believe this!" she exclaimed. While Marcia had appeared in a couple of commercials, she'd never made it literally beyond the role of a skippy mom. And so she'd gone back to school and gotten a degree in accounting. However, John Vox, one of her instructors from Northwestern, had eventually left the university and been discovered, becoming not one of the big stars, but establishing himself as a quality actor, known for his wide range. Now in his mid-50s, his blonde hair gone gray, his cherubic face interestingly lined with time, he was in recent years becoming America's favorite bad guy, playing every part from conniving conman to corrupt congressman. And just a few months ago, when he was in Chicago playing some loan shark in a film based on an Elmore Leonard book, Marcia and he had had lunch at the Ambassador Hotel's pump room. They talked about it all, Marcia's life and the corporate world, her divorce, and eventually John's films, including one that he'd done a couple of years ago playing an evil traitor opposite none other than America's favorite Tim Chase. You know, John, I'm sorry, but I gotta ask you this, said Marcia, leaning across the table. I mean, I know he's married to Gwen Owens, and my God, she's so beautiful and such a talented actress. And I know they have a little boy, but I've heard this rumor, and of course, there was that big lawsuit when he sued some magazine or something. So, you gotta tell me, is Tom Chase gay or isn't he? The way Marcia told the story, John Vox covered his mouth with his fine white napkin, leaned back his head, and roared with laughter. Well, demanded Marcia, unable to bear it, is he or isn't he? Let me tell you, Vox finally said, his face all red. Tim is a great guy, and a real pro, too. I mean, he's one of the finest actors around because he wants to do it right. Get it right. He's very smart. Always picks good scripts, and his wife, Gwen Owens, was a wonder. She brought their son and spent a week on the set. And make no bones about it, they are devoted parents. So, get to the dirt already, all right? Well, Tim had a lover, a very nice guy, very handsome, who lived with him right in his trailer. You're kidding! No, and everyone knew it from the gaffer on up. But what about Gwen Owens? Did she know? Actually, things did get a little messy. I can't quite remember the sequence of events, whether she flew over and Tim and this guy Rob had a huge fight, or they had the fight first and then Gwen came. I don't know. But Rob was there all over Tim for about 2/3 of the time we were shooting in Europe. All of that was whisked out of mind when Todd turned a corner and saw an orchard of cherry lights throbbing in the late September night. Parked this way and that, cop cars and an ambulance filled the narrow streets. A deja vu image of autumnal pandemonium that conjured up the darkest time of his own life. Quickly scanning the area, Todd noted a boxy electronic news-gathering vehicle off to the side, which unfortunately wasn't theirs, but WTCN's. Great. That meant not only that the competition had beat him to the scene, but that his former co-worker, Cindy Wilson, was probably lurking somewhere looking further ahead. He saw a photographer with a WTCN camera hurry across the street, and beyond him, a crowd of gawkers. Cindy, he guessed, was already warming her way to the body, going for some grisly shot. Driving at a crawl, Todd pulled in front of a thick old elm, parked, and got out. The night air was chilly and damp from a slight early evening rain, and Todd caught the gentle but distinct smell of smoke. Yes, he thought, as he made his way across a mat of sodden elm leaves. The lucky ones were home in front of the first fire of the season, wearing black jeans and a maroon shirt, black leather boots, and a black leather coat. Todd crossed the street and zeroed in on the vortex of tonight's attention. A dark brick apartment building, 3 stories tall. The structure was rectangular and squat. The kind that had been built in this neighborhood, the wedge in the teens and 20s. Studying the flurry surrounding the building, Todd noted the cops slipping on latex gloves as they rushed through the front door and saw the dozens of people held at bay by a band of yellow police tape. Spying a knoll in the dark across the street, he thought that, yes, that might be a good place to do the shoot. It wouldn't be the tightest angle, but they'd get the apartment building, the flurry of flashing lights, the cops darting around, and, of course, the tantalized crowd. A great background indeed. Todd! He looked over, saw Bradley pushing through the crowd, his camera, a large Betacam, held awkwardly under the arm. A tall, thin man with skin as dark as the night. He had a small face, short hair, and now wore khaki pants and a blue nylon jacket. What's up? What happened? Asked the photographer. I don't know anything more. I just got here too. Any sign of the ENG? Not yet. It'll probably be another 5 minutes or so. I think they sent Jeff, said Todd, referring to the technician who'd been assigned. Listen, I gotta try to find Rollins, see what he can tell me. Sure. Why don't you get some footage? Let's say 15 seconds of cops, 10 of real estate, and 10 of the crowd out there. Sounds like a plan. The band of yellow police tape had been set up at the sidewalk's edge, and 15 or 20 people stood crowded around. Trying to see what was going on, Todd peered through them all, but Rollins was not among the cops out front. Undoubtedly, he was inside along with the B of a I guys, who were surely already going at it, documenting anything and everything. Coming up next to a guy with a shaved head and a pierced nose, Todd asked, "What happened?" "The guy got himself fucking killed." "Really? Who?" "Her new caretaker. That's who." "You live here?" "Yeah. And this guy, he just started a month ago, moved into the basement apartment behind the laundry room. Young guy, too. A kid." "That's awful." "No shit." "What was it, drugs?" He stared at Todd with angry eyes. "How the fuck would I know?" Todd shrugged. "What was his name?" "Fred Flintstone," he said, turning away. It was a start anyway, but if Todd was going to do a live story in a few minutes, he was going to have to dig up a hell of a lot more information. Glancing to the side, he saw a small woman with big blonde hair who was laughing and smiling and batting her eyes, and a young cop who looked like he'd eat right out of her hand. It was Cindy Wilson. Some things never changed. Someone in plain clothes emerged from the building and ducked to the side. If there'd ever been such a thing as a press badge, Todd wished he had it now. Equipped with nothing more than a business card, however, he knew there was no way he'd get past the police barrier, and so he shouted out, "Rollins!" Without lifting his head, Rollins circled a birch tree and headed to the distant end of the police tape. Todd scooted out of the crowd and around, staring the entire time at the other man. Seeing Rollins raise one hand to his eyes, a tremor of worry rippled through Todd. Hurrying up to him, Todd said, "What's going on?" They stood with the yellow tape, slowly rising and falling between them, and at first Rollins shrugged and said nothing. Todd, however, could see that the other man's eyes were red, which was odd because Rollins was more than used to this kind of thing. Sure, Todd had held this shorter, stockier guy as he sobbed over the death of a friend from AIDS, or when Rollins himself had discovered that he was HIV positive, but he'd never seen him teary, not over a murder. This was business, his business, and when it came to that, Rollins was as butch as the next investigator. "What's up? What's wrong?" Rollins bit his lip and looked away, obviously eager that the other cops didn't see him. More cute than he was handsome, he had dark hair and a short, dark mustache, not to mention those dark brown eyes, all of which were usually lightened by a smile. Broad and quick. Long ago he decided what he lacked in height he'd make up in beef, and so he was broad-shouldered and stocky, a borderline muscle queen to be sure. Tonight he wore blue jeans and a brown cotton jacket. Finally he muttered, "Ah, fuck." Todd reached across the tape, touched him gently on the elbow. Jesus, what had happened in there? How horrible was it? And just how had the purported young white male met his end? He asked, "You been in?" "Yeah." "And?" Rollins wiped his eyes, said, "He was just a kid." "Who?" "Wait a minute," said Rollins, catching himself and remembering who was who and just why they were both there. "We haven't notified the family yet, so this isn't for public consumption, okay?" "Sure." "I'm serious. You can't go on the air with this." "Of course, I won't." "Well then, shit, I can't believe this. I mean, Who?" "Andrew. He was just 17. At first the name rattled without an echo, but then Todd began to remember that wonderfully charming grin, the toothy one. "My God, you don't mean that kid down at the DQ, do you?" "Yeah." "Oh, shit." The domain of queers, or the DQ, was the official youth center for, as Todd called it, the Corporation of Queers. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and the sexually questioning. one of the few such centers in the country. It was located in the old ballroom above a drugstore on Franklin Avenue, and it operated both as a haven for runaways as well as a center for fostering pride. Todd Rawlings had spoken there twice, talking about the closet, which Todd knew far too well, and about finding and developing a healthy relationship, which the two of them were inching toward, getting still more involved. Rawlings had joined the mentoring program. When I was a kid, Rawlings had ranted not long ago, we didn't have any heroes. There was no one to look up to, no one to show that you could be gay and happy. And you know what? It did zip for my sense of self-worth. I don't want to be invisible, too. Yes, Andrew was Rawlins's first mentee. Todd remembered the cute kid and that engaging smile, a young man whose folks had kicked him off the family farm when they found out he was gay. Over the course of the last 2 months, Rawlings had taken the younger man out to lunch a few times and had even given him a tour of the police department. Oh my God, I can't believe it, Rawlings now said, his eyes beating with tears as he looked back at the entrance of the building. He was a smart kid, too. Really capable. I'm sorry. I was trying to help him. See, that being out and being gay didn't mean limiting what you could do. He was even talking about going to law school. You were good to him, Rawlings. You were already making a difference in his life. Evidently not enough. Don't start thinking like that, Todd softly said. There was nothing you could have done. He was really proud of himself, proud of getting his own apartment and everything. Someone out here said he was the caretaker. Yeah, he took care of a couple of buildings around here. He took a deep breath. Oh my God, why? Why would anyone want to murder a nice, energetic kid who had a productive, robust life ahead of him? Todd said, I don't know. But he was wise enough to know that this would be a well of obsession from which they would both drink for weeks, if not months. He just hoped it wasn't a bottomless one, for the search for the truth was a compulsion to both. To Todd, the investigative reporter, as well to Rawlings, the homicide investigator, just as a number of gay people had become psychologists in all attempt to understand what made them different. Just as a number had become artists to explore their individuality. So had Todd and Rawlings chosen fields where truth was paramount. That was what they had in common most of all. No, actually it was what they had in common more and more, because initially, for Todd, his career had been all about image first, substance second. Todd hated to ask, fearing the answer, fearing that it wasn't a simple robbery or argument gone bad. He took a deep breath. What happened? I haven't heard too much yet, but he's lying in bed with his throat slit. Chances are he picked up some guy shit, thought Todd. He didn't want to have to go on the air with this. And they had sex. Yep. He knew what that meant, and he knew how in the greater scheme of things the reportage of this crime was doomed to go. It wouldn't be seen as an argument between friends gone horribly wrong, nor would it be looked upon as someone killed by a lover. No, by and large, this would be treated as it had been treated historically. An incident between two deviants who, by their very nature, were so twisted that of course they couldn't help but kill. That means we have a gay murderer on our hands. Rawlings opened his mouth to confirm, then caught himself, remembering the thin line that divided them, and said, Is that what the media is going to say? A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.